abyss of death, damnation, and evil really exist.
Hell is home to our most primal fears. It's full of torture, torment, pain for all eternity.
Is hell more than a myth?
There is hell fire. There is fire in hell. There is a literal fire in hell that is burning right
now. To some, not only is hell real, it can be found here on Earth. An erupting volcano in Iceland, pitch-black caverns twisting beneath the jungle, a lake of fire in an African desert. These remote places share one thing in common. They are all believed to be ancient entrances to hell. For thousands of years and across countless cultures, people have believed that hell lies just below our feet.
Hell was considered to be a physical place, a place that was under the earth and that you could actually visit and see with your own eyes.
Across the globe, 6 hellmouths connect the world of the living with the world of the dead.
I do believe there is a literal place of hell. I believe there must be a place for punishment.
In these remote sites, explorers are unearthing passages once thought to literally be the gateways to another world.
In the history of religions, one finds evidence of caves or volcanic openings that people thought were entrances into the netherworld.
These gates of hell are typically located in very harsh places, in deserts, exploding volcanoes, in islands, caves. These are the kind of geographical spots where you're likely to find a portal to hell.
What these explorers are finding is shocking.
Getting through a cave like this is very dangerous. Some of the people that come here, they never left.
It was like an abyss, a bottomless pit. It was the most hopeless, terrifying feeling that you can even imagine.
Linking each site and every legend are eerily similar visions of the underworld, leading to one question that has persisted throughout history. What awaits us when we pass through the gates of hell? In the heart of Nicaragua, just 12 miles from the capital of Managua, is a massive chasm in the earth, a volcano called Masaya. But for centuries it has been known by a more ominous name, Boca del Infierno, the mouth of hell.
The scale of Masaya, it's almost beyond belief. It's a giant pit, a crack in the earth, and you can only imagine where this hole leads to.
For thousands of years, Masaya has exhaled a haunting smoke, marking its location from miles away.
It seems like the volcano is alive. It breathes this toxic gas, and it heaves and buckles, almost like it's a living creature.
At the edge of its massive crater stands a single cross, a clue to Masaya's unholy history. For ages, dark tales of death and human sacrifice have surrounded the volcano. Could secrets from the past link this volcano to hell? To find out, archaeologist Elizabeth Baccadano is traveling to the site. To get to the crater, she must first pass through a series of caves carved out by scalding lava.
As you enter the cave, you feel as if you walk into the mouth of the earth. It is actually a very frightening experience. We're not far at all from the crater of the volcano.
Emerging from the lava tubes, Baccadano reaches the mouth of Masaya.
We are actually standing just above the flames, the fire of the crater, the fire of the volcano. You can feel the waves of fire down there below. We are in the 21st century, but the natives are still calling it the gates of hell.
Hundreds of years ago, natives believed this spot was a sacred entrance into the world of the dead, and they did their best to appease the gods that lived below.
This volcano witnessed ritual killings. The natives did human sacrifices. They threw individuals into the crater. Men and women were sacrificed, children were sacrificed. They knew that perhaps if they went down, they would never come back again.
Stories of these dark rituals spread. In the early 1500s, Catholic friars arriving from Spain are lured to Masaya to see it for themselves. From the book of Revelation, they know that the gate of hell is described as a bottomless burning pit whose smoke darkens the sun. Upon seeing Masaya, the friars are convinced this is hell itself. They believe that something demonic is lurking inside. One friar takes an unbelievable step. He lowers himself into the mouth of the volcano to investigate. His only protection, a wooden cross.
Going down to the crater of the volcano was a very risky operation. One can't but admire the courage of these Spaniards.
Inside the crater, the friar is horrified by what he sees, a monstrous burning chasm. For the friar, there is no doubt that this is a gateway to hell, and that he is standing at Satan's doorstep. But why is he so certain that this is the gate of hell? Clues may lie inside the Bible.
The Bible clearly states that hell was prepared for the devil and his angels. Satan, Lucifer, when he fell from heaven, he took a third part of the angels with him, and that is what hell was prepared for.
Satan, of course, originated in heaven. He was one of the commanders of the heavenly army, but he defected. The idea is that he fell down like a star from heaven.
Medieval Christians believed that when Satan and his army rebelled against God, they were thrown from heaven into a gigantic chasm underneath the earth. A pit as deep below the earth as heaven was high.
The scale of hell was huge. We're talking about a massive place with millions of lost souls.
For the friar, biblical clues confirm that just below his feet is an ultimate domain of evil, ruled by Satan, where the damned are eternally punished for their sins.
It's kind of like a city that is built underground. This is a horrific kind of city. This is a city of punishment.
Terrified that they are standing on the mouth of hell, the friars erect a cross on the edge of the crater.
The evil of this place is so evident that the church felt the need to stake a claim by putting a cross right there on top of it.
500 years later, a cross still stands, a remnant of the site's hellish history. But the belief in a gaping chasm beneath the earth goes far beyond Mount Masaya. Nearly 4,000 years ago, Sumerians believed in a great below where the dead reside. Ancient Greeks wrote of an abyss so deep that a soul could fall for a year and not reach the bottom. And in the book of Job, the underworld is called Sheol and is described as a dark pit beneath the earth. Nearly all cultures have believed in a real underworld, a universe of the dead beneath the earth.
Almost every religion of the world believes in a place called hell, and it's actually believed as a literal, tangible place, this domain of evil beneath our feet.
Eerily, although they come from different times and cultures, the accounts of hell are strikingly similar.
There are a number of names, there are a number of places, there are a number of descriptions of an underworld, of a hell, of an afterlife, but there also are substantial connections that seem to tie these descriptions together.
Hell, Hades, Sheol, no matter what you call it, there are eerie similarities in the history of all these different places.
As with Masaya, many visions of hell describe a gateway that connects the surface of the earth to the underworld below.
Gates are a very important feature of the other world, especially the entrance gate to the pit of hell. It shows up in a lot of the literature. It's definitely a recurring theme, the notion of passage into another realm, signified by the gate.
Could these visions of hell be connected? Could religions separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles all be describing the same place? Answers may lie in places like Masaya and in other hellmouths across the globe, each believed by the ancients to be actual entrances into hell. A hidden cave in Belize, a volcano in Iceland, underwater passageways beneath Greece, a mysterious basilica in Ireland, a lake of fire in Africa. Each gateway could open a new window into an alternate universe beneath us. But what lies past these gates, inside hell itself? One man believes he knows.
You will be totally awake, totally conscious, and absolutely tormented forever and ever and ever.
Hell. Does this domain of evil really exist? Across time and cultures, people have believed that 6 remote places here on Earth were actual portals to the underworld. Churning volcanoes, caves, gaping chasms in the earth, each is a gateway from the surface to an elaborately constructed realm beneath our feet.
One of the clear characteristics of death is that the movement from being alive to being dead is a passage. It's the great passage in one's life. And often that is understood in a literal way.
Typically, the mythology of hell involves a descent of some kind into the lower reaches of hell. We're connecting from the living to the dead, from good to evil. So there's going to be these transitionary areas, these caves, these volcanoes, these doorways that are going to act as a portal between the two worlds.
In many cases, the connection between these two worlds begins with a vision. Throughout history, believers have claimed to have seen hell firsthand. Today, one man is certain he saw the very brink of the eternal abyss.
There is a heaven and there is a hell, and I think we're remiss to try and say, well, God's so good, everybody goes to heaven. There's a belief where everybody gets saved, everybody gets redeemed. Well, that isn't true.
In 1968, 19-year-old Mickey Robinson is used to flirting with death. An experienced skydiver, he has made over 100 successful jumps. But Robinson is unaware that this jump would be different.
I had no idea that my life was about to change forever and it would never be the same.
Just minutes into a routine flight, something goes wrong. The plane's only engine has failed. The aircraft quickly comes crashing to Earth.
the right wing hit this tree, and then the airplane cartwheeled on its wings and impacted the ground belly side up. We hit that tree going 100 miles an hour. My face hit the front of the instrument panel, and so my head stopped my body. I was soaked with gasoline, and I was burning on fire from head to toe.
Burning alive, Robinson is pulled from the wreckage and rushed to the hospital. He barely clings to life.
My face was torn open, and you know, my whole arm was burnt. They cut the remainder of my clothing off, and so I sustained catastrophic burns over a large portion of my body. They brought in a priest who was there to administer the sacrament of extreme unction or last rites because they figured I was going to die.
With raging fevers and deadly infections consuming his body, Robinson drifts closer and closer to death.
I was racked with pain from the injuries and feeling just this weird sense of life just oozing out of me. And at that time, all of a sudden, the most bizarre thing happened. My spirit went through the bed, and I was like perpendicular to my body. And instantly, I was ejected into a spiritual world. Instantaneously, I knew this spiritual world is the real world. I was traveling. I knew that, and I had no control. And in the distance, there was this bright white light, whiter than the whitest snow and 1,000 times brighter than the sun.
But before he can reach the light, Robinson begins to feel a darker presence.
I felt something on my right side, and as soon as I looked, I saw this blackness. It was blacker than the blackest black. I'm saying that emphatically because I've never seen a blackness like this. I also could feel the very nature of it. It was eternal. It was completely empty and void. It was like an abyss, a bottomless pit, and I instantly knew if a person or a spirit goes in there, they will be separated and cut off for eternity. It is the most horrific, hopeless, terrifying feeling that you can even imagine.
The gaping void of hell grows until it is on the verge of swallowing him whole.
I felt doom. When I was in the darkness, I felt what it would like to be eternally doomed, incarcerated, and it was non-negotiable. There was no turning back.
But at the last moment, Robinson is given a second chance. He is thrown back into his body. When he regains consciousness, he is convinced that he has seen and narrowly escaped the mouth of hell.
There is a hell. It's not only a place, it's a reality. It is absolutely so real that it overwhelms you. This is permanent. This is definitive. You can't rationalize it away.
Robinson is not alone. For ages, those who have believed in a real hell have recorded strangely similar visions of the underworld.
Visions of hell proliferate throughout the historical record. The fact that somebody might have a vision today is not surprising.
Probably about as far back as humanity goes, there's always been tales of visions or near-death experiences where people have believed that they have experienced hell. It's a terrible nightmare filled with pain and suffering.
In the 7th century, a Spanish monk claims that devils led him to a lake of fire and that he escaped by making the sign of the cross. In the 12th century, a story spreads that an Irish warrior has been struck dead and returned to life. The warrior believes that in between, he experienced the pains of hell. And in the 1930s, a Polish nun named Faustina claims that an angel led her to hell. and showed her 7 torments that await the damned. All record similar accounts of hell long before Mickey Robinson's frightening vision. Transformed by his own experience, Robinson has spent the last 4 decades recounting his vision and preaching across the country. Though he believes he has been rescued from hell, he is certain that this domain of misery and evil remains a threat to us all.
I do think there's a problem with people being reluctant to talk about the reality of hell. There's no question in my mind of the existence of a spiritual force of darkness, of the devil and fallen angels and demons at war against all people. I do believe hell is a real place.
But if hell is beneath us, what horrors await us on the journey? In the remote jungles of Central America, 400 miles from Masaya, lies a second gateway to hell. The Maya believed that this cave was a door to an underworld known as Xibalba, the place of fear. Even today, surviving Maya fear the hellmouth.
For the Maya, there is still an apprehension, and so they will not enter in many cases, or if they do, it will be only after conducting many rituals to appease the gods.
Dr. Jaime Awe has spent decades combing the jungles of Belize, investigating the strange legends of Xibalba. Like Masaya, ancient references to Xibalba reveal dark rituals of human sacrifice. And the Mayan Bible, called the Popol Vuh, tells of terrible dangers, chambers that await the souls who dare to venture into Xibalba.
The Maya certainly perceived their underworld as a place that one must be fearful of. There's the house of the jaguars, the house of the killer bats. There's also a house of fire, or a chamber of fire.
Could these legends be true? What really awaits on the road to Xibalba? For Awe, finding out means entering Xibalba itself.
The Maya underworld was not an abstract sort of place. No, the underworld was part of their everyday life. The underworld was literally beneath their feet. We know this because they actually traveled to their underworld. From before Christ till present day, they traveled to this place to conduct important ceremonies that were directed to some of the gods that live in the underworld.
Unlike spiritual journeys to the underworld, Dr. Awe can follow the same path taken by the Maya into the depths of hell. But at the end of this road is a disturbing secret, one that could unravel the true reality and nature of the underworld.
Getting through a cave like this is very dangerous.
Some of the people that come here, they never left.
It is one of our most ancient beliefs that hell is real and it's hidden deep within the earth. At 6 sites across the globe are secret entrances to this underworld. But can we actually enter these gateways and physically descend into hell? 15 miles from the nearest village, archaeologists in Belize have uncovered a cave leading straight into the underworld, a place the Maya call Xibalba. Archaeologist Jaime Awe believes that the Maya used this very cave to enter Xibalba, and that inside they practiced gruesome rituals of human sacrifice. Could human remains confirm that this cave is a portal into the Mayan hell? As Dr. Awe ventures into the cave, he must quickly trek through deep water and avoid treacherous pitfalls.
As one traverses through the cave, there are areas that one can be injured, one can fall and get hurt.
As Dr. Awe descends deeper, the path he encounters matches Mayan stories and legends of Xibalba.
In Maya mythology, we know that when one traveled through the underworld, that one would go through several chambers, and many of these chambers had dangers associated with them.
The Maya believed that the passage through Xibalba was fraught with challenges designed to test and terrify the souls making their way into hell.
After death, one had to travel through the underworld. They would put through a whole series of tests by the evil gods that resided down there.
One of these tests was the House of Knives, a tight passage with sharp blades protruding from the floor and ceiling.
When you look at some of these stalactites, they very much look like blades. It's not, far-fetched to see how these things could have influenced that ideology.
To the Maya making their descent into Xibalba, these chambers pose very real dangers.
I think that there's little doubt that the living Maya perceived these houses as being very terrifying, because if one did not succeed, one would lose their soul and perhaps remain in the underworld.
And the Maya weren't alone in envisioning such a passage to the underworld. Linking the gates of hell is a central idea, that getting to hell involves a dangerous journey, a harrowing passage through a treacherous labyrinth beneath the earth.
In some of these ancient texts, you have the sense of a series of passageways and goals that you have to pass through, and tricks sometimes that you have to play in order to get to the other world, paying the ferryman, crossing the rivers.
The prospect of going to hell is not something that you would undertake lightly, and any hero who wanted to try and go there certainly would have to have a really good reason, because it's going to be the most frightening place imaginable, with the most difficult obstacles, the greatest dangers. Hell is fraught with peril every step of the way.
For the Maya, even the living could make the journey. The most chilling evidence of this dangerous voyage is hidden deeper inside the cave. Buried in Xibalba's furthest reaches, Dr. Awe has found a series of human remains. To Awe, this confirms the most haunting legends of Xibalba.
What we found was the skeletal remains of a young woman, and we estimate that she's somewhere between her late teens and 20s. It's amazing when one reflects on how this individual arrives here, because she obviously was brought in to this spot and eventually sacrificed.
To gain the favor of the gods of their underworld, the Maya brought human sacrifice victims deep into the caves. For these victims, the road to Xibalba was a one-way journey.
Obviously, for some people, like the individuals that we find here, it was a deadly journey. I mean, this was terminal journey.
Throughout history, the gates of hell are connected by the belief in a dangerous passage to the world of the dead. On his descent into the underworld, the Greek hero Theseus loses his memory. For 4 years, he is trapped and tormented by serpents. In early Mesopotamian texts, the road to the underworld is fraught with perilous mountains, rivers, and gateways. And in ancient Egypt, the dangerous descent into the underworld begins with an actual door inside the tomb.
The false door was the sort of very literal portal gateway into the underworld. The Egyptians did imagine that the tombs were the physical routes through the underworld.
After passing through the door, the departed spirit would face a series of dangers and trials, eerily similar to those of Xibalba.
For the ancient Egyptians, the underworld was a very frightening place. It was filled with monsters and demons, lost souls, pitfalls, all kinds of danger. So it's something that you wanted to sort of get through as quickly as possible.
To survive these trials, the departed consulted a sacred text called the Amduat, a virtual roadmap of the journey into the underworld.
The Amduat is a guidebook to what is in the underworld, so that's literally what it means, is what is in the underworld.
At Emory University's Archaeological Conservation Lab is a rare 3,000-year-old Amduat that reveals the dangers of this descent.
In the underworld, you had gatekeepers, guards stationed at the door. You would have these monsters at each gate, and so in order to get past them, you would have to have your Amduat in order to give you the secret names and the way to get past them.
Only by chanting the spells on this intricate map could the departed soul pass the underworld's trials and tests.
If you reached the gate and didn't have the right spell, then you couldn't get past the gate, so you'd be stuck in limbo forever.
For the Egyptians, this treacherous journey was not mere mythology. It was real. And the Egyptians were not alone. In stories of hell from across the world, in virtually every culture and every religion, heroes make the same dangerous journey past the gates of hell. Today, few people know of the ultimate journey into hell, a journey made by Jesus Christ himself.
It is stated in the creeds, from the Apostles' Creed and on, that Jesus descended into Hades, or descended into hell, as it often is put.
On his descent, Christ faces an enormous challenge: to rescue souls from hell.
The New Testament says that Jesus died on a Friday and then 3 days later returned. So the question was, where did he go? And the story is that he went down to the place of the dead, where they were in Hades, or wherever the dark place under the earth was, and brought out the ones who were faithful in the old times to God. He went down and took them from the devil and took them back to God.
In medieval paintings, Jesus emerges from a cave or a doorway, bringing souls with him out of hell. Throughout history, heroes have descended into hell to rescue the damned. In Greek mythology, Orpheus ventures into the underworld to save his wife. For 9 days, a Norse god rides into hell searching for his dead brother. Both fail, but Jesus succeeds.
The story of Jesus going into Hades, the house of Hades, needs to be seen in the context of other descents into the netherworld. I think there's no doubt that the author intended the descent story to trump the kinds of stories that you'd find in other literature.
But Jesus only rescues a select few souls from hell. What happened to those he left behind? What fate do they suffer? The answer can be found in remote corners of the world, in other gates of hell.
I don't believe that anybody could describe the eternal pain of hell. It's more horrible than anything that we could ever imagine.
A massive steaming volcano, a cave crawling beneath the earth. Gateways to the underworld reveal that going to hell means a terrifying and treacherous journey. A journey into an alternate universe beneath our feet. But what horrors await the damned when they reach the heart of hell?
We're all curious. We all want to know what hell is like. Quite often descriptions of hell are peppered with these tales of torture and torment, and usually they're far beyond what any physical person could imagine.
Modern visions of hell depict a place of unspeakable torture. Countless cultures and religions tell of a nightmarish afterlife, where the damned must pay for their sins.
I think there is a fascination with what hell entails, with describing its torments. I mean, if you think about it, what's more interesting, describing the pearly gates or describing the river of fire?
But beyond fire and brimstone, what are the tortures of hell? Who suffers them and why? One ancient civilization believed it had solved these mysteries.
Hades is the realm of the dead, and the Greeks believed that when they died, they went down into Hades. Hades most likely could be seen as a very literal kind of place underground.
Hades, the hell of the Greeks. Like Mount Masaya and the caves of Xibalba, the passages into Hades hold a unique secret, one that could reveal the reality of hell's tortures. In the southernmost tip of Greece, on the coast of the Peloponnese Peninsula, are hidden entrances to Hades.
At the southern tip of Greece, where it feels as if you're at the end of the world, there are some caves and there are some entryways that were thought to be entryways into Hades.
Dr. Marvin Meyer has traveled to the edge of the Peloponnese to investigate the legends of Hades. Somewhere on this remote rocky coast, Hercules himself discovered a cave leading into the underworld. In a series of submerged caverns, Dr. Meyer is reminded of ancient myths of Hades. Myths that speak of vast underground rivers leading to the world of the dead. These rivers could hold the key to unlocking the tortures of hell.
We are now in an underground river, heading who knows where through the corridors. I could almost believe that the world of the dead is just around the next corner. It's as if we're going through the gates of hell, going through the gates of Hades.
In Hades, the dead must cross vast rivers to descend into the underworld.
It was thought that Hades had a number of rivers. Underground rivers, mysterious kinds of rivers, and they all had symbolic names. There was the Acheron, the river of woe. There was the Cocytus, the river of wailing and crying. There was the Phlegethon, the river of fire. There was the Styx, the river of hate. These are rivers of gloom and forgetfulness.
These rivers carried all the dead to an underworld of suffering and despair.
For most of the Greeks, you'd much rather be alive than dead. It was just a kind of dark and gloomy and rather ghastly existence.
Like a post-apocalyptic wasteland, Hades' rivers flow through a ghostly limbo for the dead, a place of utter hopelessness and sorrow. But beyond the rivers of Hades is a place of even worse torment.
Those who were particularly evil, the worst of the worst, would go to Tartarus, the lowest part of Hades, where there were, in fact, punishments that were meted out upon the most wicked of people.
Tartarus, the lowest level of Hades, is a place of pure torment. Here, beneath the rivers Acheron, Cocytus, and Styx, the worst sinners in Greek mythology are tortured in gruesome ways.
If Hades in general is the realm of death, then Tartarus develops as the area of Hades where there in fact are punishments that are given to the wicked. Punishments that often fit the crimes of the wicked. And a few people, those real bad sinners, are the ones that go to Tartarus.
In Tartarus, those who have offended the gods are strapped to a wheel of flames, forced to push boulders up an enormous mountainside, and kept in unquenchable thirst and eternal hunger.
There is another figure who offended the gods and goddesses, and in his case, there were vultures that ate his liver. He couldn't die, he simply had to be tormented into eternity.
The concept of eternal punishment for our crimes seen in Tartarus would not be limited to Greek mythology. Torture would be seen in nearly every conception of hell that came after, including the Christian hell.
Doubtless, the idea of Tartarus had a huge impact on the Christian idea of hell. The same kinds of tortures that one sees in Tartarus are the kinds of tortures that one sees in other Christian ideas of what hell is all about. That is to say, the punishment will fit the crime. It happened in Tartarus, it happens in Christian hell as well.
In many religions, the underworld is a place of moral judgment and brutal punishment. It is a place where the wicked come face to face with divine justice and suffer eternally for their crimes.
The obedient ultimately will get their rewards, even though in life they may have suffered, and the wicked will get their punishments.
I think as a people, we really need to have that idea of the scales of justice. The good people get rewarded, the bad people get punished, and hell really satisfies half of that need.
In visions of hell across history, the underworld is designed as the perfect retribution for the sins committed in life. In one Islamic text, Muhammad warns sinners of snakes whose venom burns for 40 years and fires 69 times hotter than those on earth. A vision of hell recorded in a 1,500-year-old Zoroastrian text tells of tortures so horrific that 3 days feel like 9,000 years. And for some Christians, hell becomes an elaborate descending universe of punishment. The worse the sin, the more gruesome the torment.
The idea is that the punishment will suit the crime, and in the afterlife, you're going to pay the ultimate price for the sins that you've committed in life.
The Christians believed that when they went to hell, they would be tortured, but not just tortured so as to inflict maximum pain, but tortured in a way that was appropriate for the sin that they committed.
Even today, the Christian hell evokes vivid images of gruesome torments, each perfectly crafted to punish the sins of the damned. But mysteriously, as it exists today, the Bible says virtually nothing about the nature of hell's tortures.
When you look at the New Testament, you don't see a very developed idea of hell. It's just a place of suffering and fire where evil people will go.
It is a mystery. How did the Christian hell become a place of such elaborate punishment? The truth traces back to early Christian writings banned from the Bible.
These so-called apocryphal texts were not included in the New Testament, but for historians they are equally important because of the fact that they give us an idea of what people were believing in the first centuries.
Many Christian Gospels were deemed to be heresy, left out of the Bible, and lost for centuries. One recovered text, written just 100 years after Christ's death, describes hell in horrifying detail.
In the Apocalypse of Peter, Peter has a vision of what is going to transpire in the next life, so that Peter can have a kind of a sense of the horrific kinds of punishments that await the wicked.
In Peter's vision of hell, sinners are roasted in fire, blasted by lightning, and torn apart by wild animals. It would lay the foundation for how many Christians look at hell today.
In the Apocalypse of Peter, what takes place in hell can only be described as torture. The dead who are the sinners will suffer, and they will suffer appropriately. The Apocalypse of Peter ought to scare the sin out of you.
In the first centuries of Christianity, as the new religion spreads across the world, even more lurid descriptions of hell's tortures appear.
I think it's fair to say that the tortures of hell in later texts become even more sadistic and vivid. The fear of hell encouraged many to convert to the Christian faith out of fear of damnation. Those who call it Christian pornography may not be far from the mark.
Since these early Christian writings, millions of people have believed that hell's torments are real, that the wicked will be justly punished in the afterlife. Even today, people still believe in the tortures of hell, and for some, there may even be proof.
I do believe there is a literal place of hell. The place of punishment for weeping and gnashing of teeth. There must be a place for punishment.
Hell, an eternal abyss of death and damnation. For millennia, people across time and cultures have believed that there are places on Earth that are doorways to the underworld itself. A network of passages into the planet that lead to the gates of hell.
In the history of religions, one finds evidence of caves or volcanic openings that people thought were entrances into the netherworld.
Although every gate is different, each reveals a universal secret that seems to link all the visions of hell. A massive abyss, a dangerous journey, a realm of eternal torture.
The whole notion of torture and torment is really fundamental to the idea of hell. In many cases, the torture is really specifically devised to suit the crime that you've committed in life.
For some, this belief in torture continues today.
Welcome to the Sacred Division here on the Para-X Radio Network. Bishop James Long with you.
And this is Francis Etney.
And we are coming live.
James Long is a bishop in the Old Catholic Church and a radio host. Every week, Long and paranormal investigator Francis Etney host a show called The Sacred Division. Long and Etney have come upon a mysterious, murky recording that some claim to be the screaming of tortured souls in hell. And they are going to play it on the air for their listeners.
The Sounds of Hell is an incredible bone-chilling recording. The history is there were some seismologists in Siberia, and they were drilling and they were dropping mics into the earth. Mm-hmm. And instead of hearing the earth rumbling, what they actually heard were the souls of the damned. And perhaps maybe they even captured the souls being tortured and punished in hell. I want you to listen very carefully to the sounds of hell.
The recording has been denounced as a hoax by some and offered as proof of hell's torments by others.
No matter what anybody thinks about this particular recording, it does force you to think about hell.
For Bishop Long, it's not unimaginable that proof of hell could exist.
I think people are very intrinsically fascinated by the physical proof of the afterlife. I absolutely know that you can communicate with people who've passed on. There's no question about that at all. So You've heard the recording. And now we want to know what you think, what you believe. Do you think that hell is an actual, real physical place of fire and brimstone? What do you think? Call in right now and let us know. This is Bishop Long and Francis. You're live on the Sacred Division.
I do believe there is a literal place of hell. I have complete faith in the Holy Scripture when it says that there is a place of punishment for weeping and gnashing of teeth. I believe that if there is a place for reward, then there must be a place for punishment.
I would say yes, I do believe in it, that there is a place that it is there, and that it would probably be pain like you've never felt before. Something that's just so unending that you just want to die, but you can't. You're already there.
I have a lot of the traditional beliefs on a physical plane of hell. It would be like a place of pain and torture. It would be more of just the worst thing you could imagine.
All right, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric.
To Bishop Long, the calls from his listeners are clear evidence that deep-rooted beliefs in hell's torments endure today.
I think hell exists for those people who choose to deny God's grace. I do not believe that the belief in hell will ever go away, because I think that the human mind will always know that there are consequences.
Connecting visions of the gates of hell from the ancient to the modern is this desire for balance, a balance between sin and punishment.
I believe that there are consequences for the actions that we do on earth. The common thread is a place of judgment, a place of punishment, a place of torment, and it all derives from truth that has been passed down from generation to generation.
The idea that we will be judged and punished for our actions on earth goes back to the earliest civilizations. To survive the Egyptian underworld, the dead first had to prove they were pure of heart. This is the 3,000-year-old coffin of Lady Tahat, an Egyptian temple chantress. When decoded, intricate paintings on the sides of the coffin indicate that after death, we will all face a final judgment.
On this coffin, we have a really interesting depiction of the judgment scene. Tahat is being brought into the Hall of Judgment. She stands in front of the scales of justice. Her heart is weighed against the feather of truth.
Like all Egyptians journeying through the treacherous underworld, if the weight of sin on Tahat's heart is greater than the weight of a feather, she will face a final torment, being eaten alive.
If your heart is literally heavy with sin, you don't pass the test. And this monster, who has the head of a crocodile and the body of a lion all together, would eat your soul, and that would be the end of you.
The concept of final judgment, of eternal retribution for crimes committed on earth, is universal. Greeks believed that a king named Minos would judge the dead, sending the worst sinners into Tartarus. Many Muslims believe today that the damned will fall from a narrow bridge into the pit of fire. But it would be Christians who would describe the balance between sin and punishment in excruciating detail. And one Christian in particular.
When it comes to hell, one name rises above them all, and that's Dante Alighieri. It's impossible to overstate the importance of this work on our understanding of hell and the afterlife.
Dante's epic description of hell, the Inferno, would offer the most lurid vision of the tortures that awaited us.
The types of tortures that were found in Dante's hell stretched the imagination of the horrors that can be done to a human. People were boiled, burned, stabbed, pierced, stretched, anything that you could possibly imagine, and worse.
For Dante, hell was not simply a place of torture. It was a domain of eternal justice, a place where the scales were finally balanced. Around the year 1300, at the time he begins writing the Inferno, Dante is a politician caught in the middle of a fierce battle for control of Florence. He is exiled from his hometown and warned that if he returns, he will be burned at the stake.
There's no doubt that Dante Alighieri was a bitter person regarding what happened to him. A big thrust of the poem is him seeking retribution against his political enemies in the only ways he knows how, which is to imagine them burning in hell for all eternity.
Dante constructs his Inferno as a perfect torture chamber awaiting the wicked.
Dante creates his hell and his punishment so that there's a great symmetry between the sin and the punishment that is experienced in hell. It's the sense of justice and balance that he pursues relentlessly.
Dante's hell consists of 9 circles. Each descending level corresponds to a graver sin and a fiercer torment.
At the top of the cone, you would find the majority of the dead. And then you would find increasing punishments as one moves down the funnel until you get to the creme de la creme of wickedness.
In the upper circles of Dante's Inferno, people are punished for the more common human failings. Those guilty of lust are blown by relentless wind. Gluttons are trapped eternally in rain, mud, and filth. The lower circles have more gruesome punishments. Heretics are encased in tombs of fire. Thieves are attacked by snakes. The violent are bombarded with fire from the skies or scalded in a boiling river of blood.
The deeper you go into hell, the more horrific the torment and the punishment. People are described as being consumed by snakes or being upside down in the ground with their feet sticking out or their feet held to the fire. It's pretty gruesome and it's pretty horrible. He imagines people having their full senses with them so that they can really feel this pain for all eternity.
The tortures are extreme, but they are not arbitrary.
If there's one central message that he's trying to get across in the poem, it's that the choices you make in life are going to have eternal repercussions in the afterlife, and that your specific torture is going to be tailored to the bad choices you made in life.
Before Dante, many visions of hell had described the torments that awaited us. But the gruesome scenes of the Inferno propelled the tortures of hell to a new level of fear. But if hell is a realm of divinely sanctioned torture, who inflicts the punishments? Lost texts and modern hellmouths reveal the damned are not alone. They suffer at the hands of demons. March 2010. A volcano in Iceland explodes, spewing fire and ash and releasing an earth-shaking roar. For weeks, planes across Europe are grounded. To most, it's an incredible display of the power of the earth. But to a few who know the history of Iceland, this eruption mirrors an event 900 years in the past, one believed to be a cry from hell itself. Medieval witnesses believed that the event marked this location as a gateway to hell and confirmed the Bible's warnings about the reality of hell's demons.
From the earliest Christian writings, hell has been inhabited by legions of demons. 1/3 of all of God's angels fell down to hell and became the population of demons who live there. There are different demons and devils, and they take great delight in tormenting the lost souls.
There's the sense that it's a populated and settled place, that hell has been occupied by demons and souls for a long time. They've built cities.
But demons are not simply tortured souls in hell. They have one mysterious power that the human damned do not. Clues to their supernatural powers are being unearthed in the erupting landscape of Iceland.
In 2010, eruptions in Iceland have basically sealed the fate of Iceland as always being known as a place where hell could possibly exist.
Just 30 miles north of this violent eruption site, in a desolate stretch of Iceland, is another volcano, long believed to be a portal to hell.
Hell was considered to be a physical place, a place that was under the earth and that you could actually visit and see with your own eyes. And one of those places was Mount Hekla in Iceland.
Could an enormous supernatural event have taken place at Hekla? Author Jeff Wise is journeying to this volcano to find out firsthand.
Iceland is a land of extreme geology. It sits atop a plume of magma that's rising up from deep within the earth. So there's a constant danger of volcanic eruption. At the same time, you have ice and snow, glaciers forming, carving out the landscape. And so you have, in one land, two extremes, fire and ice. The landscape here is so extreme that the imagination is left to grasp at some way of understanding it.
Medieval legends say that 900 years ago, an enormous eruption at Mount Hekla broke the barriers of hell. As Jeff reaches the base of the volcano, the grim, stark terrain is a reminder of this deadly eruption.
Climbing up the slopes of Mount Hekla, there's nothing living as far as the eye can see.
In 1104, there was a catastrophic explosion of Hekla where ash billowed into the atmosphere.
Lava and ash from this slope traveled far down over this valley, covering whole villages, spreading word of cataclysm as far as Europe.
To Catholics observing the eruption and hearing the eerie sound, there was only one explanation.
When they saw the eruption, it seemed like hell itself was spilling up out of the ground and into the world. They heard noises coming out of the eruption, and they concluded that it was the sound of damned souls being dragged to hell by demons. When theologians of the medieval church heard news of what had happened here on Hekla, they concluded that it must be a sign, proof positive, that hell existed right here on Earth.
But Hekla was not just a passage into hell. It was a place where the demons inside could escape to the world of the living.
When they looked to the mountain and saw the eruptions, they saw pumice and ash flying out of the cone and concluded that it was demons circling hell. Human souls are trapped in hell forever, but demons are not happy to stay in the underworld. They want to come up and out and spread and rule over the world of the living, but they need some place to come out, a place like Hekla.
Iceland reveals that hell may be a prison for human souls, but for demons, hellmouths are gateways to the mortal world.
The landscape in Iceland, it's so stark and so unique and so hellish that it really becomes a place where the two worlds meet, where they come together, the human world and the underworld.
The gates of hell are places where two worlds collide, where the living, the dead, and demons all come into contact. It is an idea reinforced by the Bible.
The book of Revelation talks about the gates of hell opening. It's a place which burst open and monsters come out and wreak havoc on the earth. The idea developed that the world was actually partly taken over by the forces of evil. If you read the Gospel of Mark, for example, the world is infested with demons, and every kind of human suffering is caused by demons.
The belief that the worlds of the living and the dead collide connects Iceland to the ancient world. Thousands of years ago, Greeks believed that strange rituals would allow them to speak to the dead in the underworld.
The Greeks believed that around their country there were several places that were gateways or portals to the dead and could be used as sites where one could in fact meet with the dead and converse with the dead once again.
Greeks came to a site called the Necromanteon to contact the spirits of the departed.
This is a very ancient and a very significant Greek site. One has the feeling here that one is in the presence of death. Perhaps here there is, in fact, some kind of access to the realm of the dead.
Here, in this underground chamber, Greeks believed that just on the other side of this wall was Hades itself, the underworld. But for the dead to be able to speak to the living, they needed to be given a source of life. And there was only one way to do this: a blood sacrifice.
In order to encounter the dead, you really had to have some kind of blood. The dead need blood. When that kind of a shadow can touch the blood, can taste the blood, can ingest the blood that is the life, it may well be that for some people, there is a reminder here of vampires and the idea of the shades who need to have blood in order to communicate and to be in touch with the living once again.
The Necromanteon in Greece, Mount Hekla in Iceland. Both sites suggest that the inhabitants of the underworld are not always trapped there. An event as large as a volcanic eruption or as small as a blood sacrifice can unlock the gates of hell. Even the devil himself can escape. And nothing would make that clearer than a series of otherworldly events that happened right here in America. In 17th century America, on the fringes of the original colonies, the New World would confront a terrifying enemy. With just 250,000 settlers, colonists had barely explored the New World. And in the depths of this wild frontier, they would come face to face with demons.
From the earliest texts that we have, these little demons play a very important part in descriptions of hell. They're the agents of the devil. They are the ones who try to capture the souls and bring them to hell.
The colonists believed they shared this new wilderness with the devil himself.
This notion that hell was a literal place, that demons could escape it, that the devil and his legions could come out and possess people, was a part of their religious imagination.
In 1692, renowned Puritan preacher Cotton Mather warns that the vast colonial wilderness is the territory of the devil and his army. And in Salem, Massachusetts, the residents believe that demons have turned this wilderness into a portal to hell.
If you can imagine what it must have been like in the 17th century to be perched on the very edge of a vast, wild continent. For the people of Salem, the surrounding forests were places of mystery and danger. And in those forests, they believed that Satan dwelled and his minions were lurking.
For the inhabitants of Salem, hell was not completely divided from the earth with no penetration possible between the two. Devils could escape hell.
January 1692. The daughter of Reverend Samuel Parris is overtaken by convulsions and screaming fits. As the strange illness quickly spreads throughout the village, Salem residents believe that demonic forces are at work. Under intense interrogation, teenager Abigail Hobbs confesses to signing a pact with the devil himself. When asked where, she replies, in the woods.
What the witches of Salem were accused of was going out into the forest, connecting with Satan, signing a pact with him to give over their souls to him and to owe their allegiance to him.
Because the devil's a supernatural and powerful being, if you make an agreement with him, he can do remarkable things for you. So the idea of the pact with the devil is that you want supernatural powers. You want something he can offer you, and you offer him a trade. When you make a pact with Satan, the price is your soul.
It is in the woods, they believe, that demons occupy the earth and threaten the souls of the living.
The colonists themselves would certainly have explained it in these very terms, that the devil is alive and well. He can still possess people. He can still wreak havoc on the earth.
Salem's residents are so convinced of the reality of Satan and demons that they believe their entire town is being overrun by the Prince of Darkness himself. Within a year, nearly 150 men and women are accused of witchcraft. 19 are executed. To the earliest colonists, hell was not only beneath them, it surrounded them. Their fear of the evil that lurked in the wilderness was so real that it changed American history.
Fear is such a powerful primal emotion that it can possess you. It can take over your rational thoughts. And at Salem, we see the example of an entire community becoming possessed by fear.
When people talk about demons, I think they're talking about capacities in human nature. In the case of Salem, you can see this goes back to ancient belief that people can be possessed by the powers of evil.
Here in America, more than 300 years later, this belief continues today. Those who believe in the literal existence of demons see their supernatural influence in everyday events.
I don't believe that demons are confined to hell. I believe a lot of the things that we see in our culture, we see some heinous crimes, some things that you never even dreamed would happen, and I believe the influence of demons has a lot to do with it.
For believers, Satan is a real being with power over the earth and the people who live on it.
The scripture teaches that hell is a literal place and Satan is a literal person.
To people who imagine that there is a real palpable evil in the world, that evil is the source of everything bad that happens to humankind, the force, the prime motivator behind that evil is Satan. Satan is the embodiment of all evil.
But who is Satan, and why is he so feared, even today? The evidence leads to Jerusalem in the first days of Christianity, just a few decades after the death of Jesus. Jews were at war with Rome. In 70 AD, Roman soldiers stormed Jerusalem and destroyed their most sacred site, the Holy Temple.
The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem was an event that every gospel author had to deal with. You couldn't ignore it. It was such a large event. What kind of sense can you make of it? With something that is that horrific, that is that evil, that is so destructive of our self-identity.
It must have been for people in Jerusalem more than what 9/11 was for Americans in New York, because it was the entire center of the city that suddenly had been devastated. It's only in the time of enormous tumult and battle against Rome that Jews began to see the world split between the forces of good and evil.
To make sense of this catastrophic event, the first Christians saw a world divided into good and evil. God embodied the forces of good, while evil took on the identity of Satan.
There's the evil one. His name is sometimes Beliar, which means without light. He can be called Mastema, which means hatred. He can be called Satan, which means the adversary. But anyway, he's called the Prince of Darkness.
The belief that a battle between good and evil is waged between God and Satan continues today.
For people who believe in Satan as an actual potent force, he is responsible for all the evil that befalls mankind. He is the actor who causes mayhem.
I believe that Satan is real. Satan is the most cunning, beautiful, most amazing, perfect person you can possibly imagine, but rooted inside is nothing but ugliness and darkness and lies and deceit.
From Mount Masaya in Nicaragua to Mount Hekla in Iceland, the gates of hell have long been thought to be places where evil can emerge from the underworld, cross through to the earth, and infiltrate our daily lives.
It is not just an idea. It is not just some figment of somebody's imagination or some mystical place heard about in history. Hell is a real place. There are literal people in hell. There is a literal fire in hell that is burning right now.
Hell. For believers today, it is a fearful reality.
My friend, it is not just an idea. It is not just some figment of somebody's imagination or some mystical place heard about in history. Hell is a real place. Every single one of you in here deserve to be in hell today. You deserve to spend an eternity in a place called hell.
Amen, that's right.
For ages, priests and pastors have warned followers that nothing more than a thin crust of earth separated them from an eternal nightmare below.
There are definitely records of people experiencing real anxiety and despair over whether they're one of the elect, over whether they're saved or damned. There are instances of people going insane, essentially, over this fear that they're damned.
This deep-rooted fear still has power today. 70% of Americans say they believe in hell.
I think the fact that a majority of Americans believe in hell is significant. Psychologically speaking, I do think that the notion of hell continues to hold some power over Americans.
Personally, I believe the reason that I responded to the gospel and was saved is because I did not want to die and go to hell. You can paint the best picture you can of heaven, try to make it as beautiful as you can, but there's just something about painting a picture of the awfulness of hell that makes people want to respond. Fear can be a tremendous motivator as far as trying to warn people about the reality of hell.
Chris Simpson is a fifth-generation Baptist preacher in Dallas, Georgia. At the White Oak Springs Baptist Church, he preaches that hell is a real place, threatening to devour us.
I want to preach on why I believe in a literal hell. Why I believe in a literal hell. There are literal people in hell. There are real people in hell. We talked about Korah, the man that rebelled against Moses, led a rebellion against the man of God, Moses. He's in hell today. Everybody that is not saved by the grace of God will be turned into hell. That's not talking about wickedness as an idea or wickedness as a philosophy. That is talking about wicked people that die without Christ. They will be turned into hell.
To Pastor Simpson, there is only one way to avoid hell. Have faith in Jesus Christ and hope to be offered God's grace.
The Bible teaches that there is not one good person on the face of this earth. The Bible tells us that we will never, ever, ever be able to be good enough to earn heaven. And so hell is not for bad people. Hell is for people that do not accept Jesus Christ. I feel a very heavy weight of responsibility on me to preach the right message and to confront people with their eternity, because you never know when somebody walks through the doors of your church. You never know if they'll ever be back again. There is hell fire. There is fire in hell. In Mark chapter number 9, 4 times in talking about hell, he said it's a place where the fire is not quenched. Where the fire is not quenched. There is a literal fire in hell that is burning right now. And you, just a minuscule nothing, just a sinner, just a wicked, awful person trying to make it to heaven on your own right or by your own good deeds. You'll stand before God speechless with nothing to say. And you'll come out of hell and stand before God, and you'll be sentenced to a place called the lake of fire forever and ever and ever.
Pastor Simpson is not the first hellfire preacher in America. He is part of a legacy that stretches back 400 years. Puritans who arrived here in the 1600s also believed not only that hell was real, but that only God could save people from the eternal fire below. In harrowing sermons, preachers warned that sinners would be swallowed by the mouth of hell.
There's the image of God holding the sinner by a feeble, brittle thread over the pit of hell.
On July 8, 1741, New England preacher Jonathan Edwards delivers the sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. He warns that at any moment, God can let sinners slide into the devouring flames of hell. Preachers like Edwards believed in predestination, a doctrine stating that people are powerless to save themselves from hell.
The traditional Calvinist concept of predestination is that everyone is depraved, everyone is worthy of hell. God alone decides who is saved and who is damned.
According to this doctrine, God selects some for salvation and casts the rest into an eternal fire.
Hell cannot be avoided by doing good works. The Bible is very clear that we are saved by grace. And grace is God giving you something that you do not deserve. That means it's something that you cannot earn.
But for Christians who don't believe in predestination, there are ways to avoid damnation. And some believe that the key to avoiding hell rests inside another portal to the underworld. In Ireland, on a remote lake called Loch Derg, is a small island known as St. Patrick's Purgatory. On this island is a church wrapped in a medieval 1,000-year-old legend. A legend marking St. Patrick's Purgatory as a gateway to hell. Here, every summer, thousands of Catholics flock to the site. In rituals that date back to the Middle Ages, they fast and deprive themselves of sleep for days, symbolically locking themselves in a basilica overnight. These faithful chant, pray, and renounce the devil.
I renounce the world.
But what is St. Patrick's Purgatory? And why does this sacred site still draw the faithful? The answer is as old as St. Patrick himself. Eileen Gardner has traveled to Loch Derg to investigate this entrance to hell.
This was a very famous, very sacred site, and people we know traveled from all over Europe and probably the Holy Land to come here.
At this very place, more than 1,500 years ago, it was believed that St. Patrick had visions of the underworld.
There's a cave on this island that legend has that St. Patrick, when he was trying to convert the pagans, needed some proof for them. And he spoke to the Lord, and the Lord showed him this entrance to a cave. And a hole opens up, and he can see through the hole into the underworld.
Mysteriously, no one recorded exactly what St. Patrick saw. But stories suggest that he found a pit leading to Purgatory, an upper chamber of hell designed to purify the souls of the dead. Tales of his vision turned Loch Derg into a major pilgrimage site.
Some of these pilgrims would even go as far as to allow themselves to be locked inside the cave to try and experience what St. Patrick experienced, to get these visions for themselves.
In the 12th century, stories spread that a knight entered the underworld through St. Patrick's Purgatory and witnessed boiling cauldrons, freezing rivers, and an army of demons. Since then, hundreds of visions from this site have been recorded, confirming Loch Derg's legend as a gateway to hell. Today, the entrance to the cave has been lost to time and the elements. A bell tower marks its location. But pilgrims continue to journey to the island. Like their medieval predecessors, they hope at this gateway to find a way to avoid hell by purifying their souls through penance.
Loch Derg represented for people a place where they could come in this life and do penance for their sins and avoid punishment in the next life. The legend associated with St. Patrick's Purgatory is that if you come here 3 times and do the pilgrimage, you never will enter hell.
Here, medieval beliefs have retained their power into the 21st century.
When you look at human history, few ideas have more captivated us, terrified us, motivated us than the idea of hell. Hell is one of mankind's most ancient creations, and it continues to be one of the most powerful ideas we have.
Today, gates of hell in Belize, Nicaragua, Greece, Iceland, and Ireland are otherworldly reminders of hell's primordial power. But could these gateways all be connected? And could a final hellmouth reveal what awaits at the heart of hell?
It's one of the most harsh and inhospitable places on Earth. It's actually known as the hellhole of creation.
The gates of hell. From haunted caves to monstrous volcanoes, actual portals on Earth descend into a terrifying, twisting underworld of death. These mysterious sites have linked visions of the afterlife for thousands of years, revealing frightening glimpses of what awaits us when we die. But what do all visions of the underworld have in common? Where do the gates of hell finally lead? Myths and modern beliefs point to the same place, an insatiable furnace near the center of the earth.
Jesus describes it as a place with fire. 4 times he uses the expression where the fire is not quenched.
In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus talks about people being thrown into the fires of Gehenna and the fires of hell.
But if hell is a furnace, what is the fuel? What gives hell its tremendous power? In one of Earth's deadliest places lies a final gateway that may lead to the heart of hell itself. In the remote, barren reaches of Ethiopia is a lethal volcano that, according to local legends, is linked to the origin of the universe and is as old as creation itself.
The Erta Ale volcano is actually known as the hellhole of creation. And when the locals talk about the volcano, they really speak with a tone of caution. They don't like to go there very often because they feel that there are evil spirits there.
Could Erta Ale lead directly to the true source of hell's power? George Coronis is one of the few people to have ventured to Earth's most horrific hellmouth. To get there, he must survive a trek through the Danakil Desert, one of the lowest and hottest places on Earth.
Not only is Erta Ale located in a desert, but it's one of the harshest, most inhospitable deserts in the world. There's almost no life, and just to get to this volcano, it's almost like a journey through hell itself.
Erta Ale lies in a place where the Earth is opening up. Here, 3 massive tectonic rifts are pulling apart, splitting the African continent and opening a dangerous window into the planet's interior. Like a scene from Dante's Inferno, Erta Ale is a fiery pit descending into the Earth. At the surface is Erta Ale's crater, a true lake of fire.
It's literally a boiling cauldron, a window into the center of the Earth. If there's any place that's going to be a gateway to hell, this has got to be it.
At 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the lava lake can instantly incinerate human flesh. But Coronis is compelled to get a closer look.
It wasn't enough for me to just visit the volcano. I had to take it one step further and descend down inside. Because the potential for disaster is so high, a heat suit is pretty much mandatory when going inside the pit of the crater. At any time, the volcano could erupt, it could spew lava. I don't want to get scorched by this 2,000-degree molten rock.
Sorry, you're in the middle of the lava flow there.
Standing inside the mouth of hell, Coronis gets a unique window into the mythology of the fiery underworld.
When you think of hell, you really do think of fire and brimstone. And it really comes to true light when you go to a place like Erta Ale, because you've got the magma that's coming up from the ground. You've got this volcanic gas, this sulfur dioxide gas, which is brimstone, the sulfur. It burns your eyes. It stings your nose. It's real. It's there. It's tangible. You can see it and you can smell it.
Since ancient times, people have believed that volcanoes like Erta Ale lead to a blazing world of the dead, that the underworld is a realm of fire. This belief links all the gates of hell.
One of the reasons why people from antiquity up to modernity have thought of hell as being a hot place under the earth is because when we open up the earth, when we look into the earth, we often see heat. And we see volcanoes and we see rivers of lava. So if hell is down there, it's got to be a pretty hot, stifling place.
No one can be certain what really exists 4,000 miles beneath the surface. It remains one of our greatest unsolved mysteries. But scientists believe that in the center of the Earth, there is a white-hot cauldron of molten iron, 1,400 miles thick, and nearly as hot as the surface of the sun, hot enough to melt steel. To those who believe in hell, this uncertainty of what exists below is evidence that hell is beneath us.
Personally, I believe that hell right now is in the center of the earth. Scientific evidence points toward fire and pressure and extreme temperature in the center of the earth, and it parallels what the Bible has to say about hell.
For believers, the gates of hell link modern mysteries of our planet with ancient mysteries of the afterlife. But today, most people imagine hell not as a fiery realm under the earth, but as a spiritual dimension eternally cut off from God. Even so, what links every interpretation, every site, every gate, is fear.
I think it would be difficult to overestimate how important fear of hell is for some people.
The idea of hell is something that's deep inside of us, and it sort of feeds off of our most primal fears.
When we imagine the afterlife, we don't know really what's going to happen to ourselves. We think about all the potentially horrible things that can happen.
This fear of the unknown connects our modern beliefs with the oldest stories of the underworld.
Different cultures have different names for the place, but I think the similarities between these places really shows our human primal fears.
It's such a human question. That is, what happens when we die? Is that the end of it? Is that all there is?
As old as religion itself is the universal fear that our actions in life will determine our fate after death.
Every single one of us are going to pass away. And we all know that in the end, we're going to face God, and we are going to choose heaven or hell. But my message for people is, let's not fear God, and let's just simply do good, avoid evil, and you have nothing to fear.
In the 21st century, hell continues to be fueled by the belief that evil will ultimately be overthrown and banished forever.
An enormous appeal of hell is a deep longing for everything to be put right so that it ends in the way that it ought to end.
There is a war going on, a very real war between good and evil, and good will prevail.
Hell still is a powerful place that still has a spot in our culture, in our belief system, and it's very much a place that is still going to live on for many more generations. We're not quite through with hell yet.